Greetings and salutations, Michigan Ultimate Survivor League members, owners, friends, and family. It is I, James Elsinger, coming to you from Studio C. Whatever. Down at the Mega XP Zone. Too lazy to move everything over to the other wall. So, got my Atrium Cafe coffee. Almost got hit by a huge buck in the middle of the city this morning. That woke me up, so I figured why not have some coffee to keep the ride going. Get out and vote today also. I'll circle back on that, hopefully, if I don't forget. Today's election day, especially if you live in Jackson. It's very important. So we have 2 weeks left. A lot of things can still happen, especially in one conference, as we'll talk about. Not a lot was really cemented this week, which is good for most leagues, not good if you're winning the conference. So, yeah, we'll talk about all those scenarios. But first, we're going to get into the bottom 10 and the top 20. So here we go. We're going to start off with the bottom 10, okay? And that, of course, the Donkey Punchers, who have been ripped from the clutches of Will Green and given to a friend of mine who lives in Lansing. They are now renamed the Lansing Lunatics. They submitted a super lineup this week because, like, what the hell? I can get in on points, can't get on a random card. And they lost, unfortunately. So kudos to at least putting an effort in and to Built D Ford Tough. Congratulations on beating a team that had nothing to lose, threw everything at you, and you still won. So that's good. Brady's backup. That's the former Irish Shamrocks, another team that has been stripped from its original owner. This time they get a win, though. So they got a one-game win streak going on. The Bombers. They were a team that had threatened to get ripped away, and ever since then he's been putting a lineup in. And look at this guy. He wins this week, moving up to 2-7. Rolling with my homies, 2-7 on a 3-game lose streak. Now you see me, now you don't. 3-game lose streak, 2-7. Carry on Wayward Son, 2-7, a 5-game losing streak. They were 2-2 at one point, people. They just want this season to be over. The Lions, they won last week, lose this week, right back to their old ways, just like the regular Lions. True Blue Wrecking Crew, 2-7, losing 3 in a row, but they've scored 711 points, so significantly better than these other teams. 700 Club don't mean dick anymore, unfortunately. So, Bitch is back with a win, a rare win for Bitch is back. 509 points, which is balls, but she's 3-6, so whatever. Brady's balls, speaking of balls, 3-6 with 629 points. That is your top, or bottom 10, rather. Oh my God. It's hot as hell. Speaking of balls, it's hot as balls in here. Woo! So, don't forget to take that to work today. Anyway, so here we go. That's the bottom 10. We're going to look now at the top 20, which is much more important than the bottom 10. Nasty Nutria having a great comeback here. Brady Bush Falls, FL Farging Expos just on the brink of the top 20, but not quite good enough. So that means the top 20 are number 20, Zeke's Relationship Quarter in the top 20 for the first time in a minute. 797. That's really good for 5-4 to have 797 points. It's big time. We're going to go, if you look way over here, well, this is this last column here is a very important column. This is how many points back they are from the number 1 points in the lead. That's going to become much more important as the last couple weeks come into play, and we'll talk about that. Tallywhackers, they're 6-3 with 706 on a 3-game win streak. Hernandez Hitman also in the top 20 for the first time in a minute. Number 18, 6-3, 7-14. Password is Taco loses a third in a row. Fallen, they were 6-0. Now they're 6-3. Hey, not saying anything, but you might want to change your password. Just saying. Can I get a hot chub? Lost this week down to number 16 from number 12. Monstars lost from number 10 to number 15, so they're falling a little bit. 6-3 also, but 738. That's not a bad point total. Hockenstein and Kakumbas accidentally hit 2 things down. They both lost, but from number 7 to number 8, number 13 and 14 respectively. Bring back the butt fumble in a 3-game win streak. They were 3-3, now they're 6-3. 776 points, only 58 points back from the leader. So anything that's under 100 here, you want to pay special attention. Stafford's Bastards, only 45 points from the leader, as they have 789 points. 6-3. Super Original, even closer. They are officially in the Elite 800 club. 6-3, 1-game win streak, 33 points back from the leader. New Orleans Rock Chucks, also in the Elite 800. New Orleans Rock Chucks, they are on a 2-game win streak, and they are in control, potentially, of their own destiny. We'll talk about that, assuming with a little help, New Orleans could win that division. Mayfield's Chubb, up from number 13 up to number 8 with another win. They are 7.9 points from the top right now. So they're sitting very good, not only in terms of record, but also in terms of points. But there's 2 games left. A lot of points can be scored in 2 weeks. Play with Mike Ditka. They're 6-3. The 3-game losing streak. They were fucking undefeated, and now they're 6-3. But right here, I don't know if you can see that on your screen. Let me look. Oh yeah, right there. You see that 0? You know what that 0 means? That 0 means that they are in the lead for the points. Not by much. 7.9 over Mayfield's show. Then we get up to the 7-2 team. Sticks it in ya. Big game coming up this week. Let me tell you. We'll talk about it in a minute. 7-2, 736, 98 points behind the lead. Honolulu Blue Balls, 7-2 with 752. They lost this week, unfortunately. They're up to number 5. Granny's Baloney Curtains also lost, but they only went from number 3 to number 4. 46 points behind, 7-2. These guys, it's tough, but I mean, you wouldn't think that if you're 7-2, you risk losing the playoffs, but with all these 6-3 teams still, you might. These 6-3 teams win out, and 7-2 teams lose out. You might find yourself on the outside of record playoff points, or record playoff position. Giggle up from number 6, number 3, riding a 5-game winning streak, folks. They were 2-2, and now they are 7-2, 800, the Elite 800 as well. And then we get to Bleeding Blue Bombers, 8-1, only 743 points. But they're 8-1. Almost guaranteed to make the playoffs, even on record, even if they don't get the win of their conference, which they might. And then Tenacious D, of course, 9-0, 18 points from the top. Almost guaranteed to make the playoffs. I mean, well, in fact, I'm going to say they're pretty much. Well, I can't say pretty much guaranteed because that doesn't make any sense. But almost guaranteed to make the playoffs, one way or the other. And we'll talk about their playoff scenarios here in just a second. So Tenacious D, they've been number 1 for a couple weeks in a row, have broken that curse, being number 1 and winning. Let's go to my notes section here. So here's a quick look at the playoff breakdown. I mean, I kind of did some of this while I was at home this morning, but here's the important parts. Okay, we're going to get to the important parts right now. We got the Lebowski Conference. Let's pull up these conferences here. Bleeding Blue Bombers are 8-1. Password is Taco is 6-3. New Orleans Rock Chucks 6-3. These are the only 3 teams that theoretically have a chance. But because Password is Taco lost to Bleeding Blue Bombers, even if they win out and Bleeding Blue Bombers loses out, they really don't have, they can't win the division based on record. Put it that way, okay? So here are the scenarios for this division. Okay, I've done a couple of these. Some of them are way too complicated, but I can break this one down, no problem. Bleeding Bombers wins 1 of the next 2 games. They're in, period. They win the conference. Okay, they have to win 1 of the next 2 games. Bleeding Bombers wins both the next 2 games. Obviously, they win. If Bleeding Bombers, and keep in mind, they play New Orleans Rock Chucks either this week or next week. I'll double check. But if they lose both games, that'll put them at 8-3. If New Orleans Rock Chucks wins both games, and Bleeding Blue Bombers loses both games, and Password is Taco loses 1 more game, at that point, New Orleans Rock Chucks would win that conference because they would be 8-3. Password to Tacos would be 7-4, and Bleeding Blue Bombers would be 8-3. But New Orleans Rock Chucks has to play Bleeding Blue Bombers. If they win out, obviously that means they beat Bleeding Blue Bombers, which means that New Orleans Rock Chucks would come out of nowhere and win this conference. Okay, so the other weird scenario is this: let's say Bleeding Blue Bombers loses out, New Orleans Rock Chucks wins out, including beating Blue Bombers, and Password is Taco wins out. That means there are 3 teams that are 8-3. But here's where it gets interesting. They've each beaten each other, which means that they're both all 3 teams are 1-1 against the other teams. Which then means, if that were to happen, again, Bleeding Blue Bombers loses out, Password is Taco, and New Orleans Rock Chucks win out. That means they're tied, and it goes to the points. If you look at the points, New Orleans Rock Chucks has a 70-point advantage over Bleeding Blue Bombers. We're looking right here, folks. Okay, I don't know if can you see when I highlight something? You can. Okay, good. I don't know what just happened. So you can see when I highlight something. Okay, you can see my stuff's highlighted. Okay. Bleeding Blue Bombers, only 22 points back. If you look here, they have 813 points. Or, sorry, New Orleans Rock Sharks, 813 points. Bleeding Blue Bombers, 743. Pass per tackle, 716. So they have a huge advantage. And in order to win both games, they're obviously going to have to score points. So I'm going to say it right now. I'm calling it. Not that it's much of a prediction. But if Bleeding Blue Bombers loses out, Pass per tackle wins out, New Orleans Rock Sharks wins out, then New Orleans Rock Sharks will have that tiebreaker in points, because I don't see how they don't win it when they got an 80-point advantage 2 games ago. Now, that being said, Bleeding Blue Bombers wins 1 game, they win that conference. So, and I think they play each other, let's look. It might be this week. It is this week. So yeah, huge game there. New Orleans Rock Sharks wins. It all comes down to Melissa's meatballs in the final week to secure that division for somebody that's not BBB. Triple B. Rip to the real Triple B. Burrito Biting Bud. All right, so Kirk Lazarus Conference. A little bit trickier here. Honolulu Blue Balls has the lead. If they win out, they win, obviously. However, in Week 11, they play with Mike Ditka. So that's a big game. If Honolulu Blue Balls wins both of their games, they win the conference. If they lose both their games, it's anybody's game, realistically. Hernandez, Hitman, and play with Mike Ditka both 6-3. And Cheechki, Trump Up the Volume, and Providence Power. I mean, it's very unlikely they could win this. We'd have to look at tiebreakers next week. But, I mean, mathematically, not counting tiebreakers, they're still alive. It would take a hell of a lot of things for it to happen, but who knows? It can happen. Then we go down to the, let's look here real quick. Let me pull up the, I have 2 monitors at the store, and it throws me off because my mouse always goes on the other monitor. Yeah, Honolulu Blue Balls 7-2, play with Mike Ditka 6-3, Hernandez at 6-3. Cheechki, Trump with the Vine, Providence Power. They're all, somewhat alive, but I'd have to pull up the tiebreakers to see what's going on there, and it's probably not going to happen, put it that way. Then we get down to the Ron Burgundy Conference. And here you have a 5-horse race with Giggle Giggle yet to play Can I Get a Hot Chub, still coming up. Tallywhackers still yet to play J Footman Can, okay? So a lot of interdivisional games that are very important at the end of the year. Giggle Giggle has beaten J Footman Can and Zeke's Relationship Corners. However, they lost to the Tallywhackers. So if the Tallywhackers and Giggle Giggle end up being the only 2 teams at the top, Tallywhackers will get that division. Now, if Giggle Giggle loses, if they lose 1 game, J Footman Can and Zeke's Relationship Corner are out of the running. If Giggle Giggle loses 2 games, anything can happen, basically. At this point, that's what we're saying officially. Anything can happen if Giggle Giggle loses both their games. If Giggle Giggle wins 1 game, it becomes a race between Tallywhackers and Can I Get a Hot Chub? And Giggle Giggle, obviously. So that's where we're at with that one. J Footman Can, Zeke's Relationship Corner. Somehow, I'm not calling them out yet, but it's going to be tough. It takes a lot of help. Spokane Conference, this is interesting. Spokane Conference, you got 2 games left. Tenacious D, 9-0, would have to lose out in order not to win this thing. And here's why. Because they still have to play Sticks It In You, and I believe that is this week as well. So this is a huge, huge week for playoffs. It is. Number 6 versus number 11, or number 1, sorry. Sticks It In You taking on Tenacious D. I need new glasses. So if Tenacious D wins that match this week, they can literally start like 4th-string players in Week 11, and it's basically 2 buys at that point for them, because they will have the conference wrapped up, they will have their $50 paycheck, and they will also, I mean, let me reiterate how important it is to win these conferences, okay? Because you get a bye the first week of the playoffs. All conference winners get a bye, period. So that means a whole week of not starting players. If Tenacious D wins this week against Sticks It In Ya, they have already won the conference, so they can start just total never will be's. So basically, they get 2 buys in that sense. So it's very important that Sticks It In Ya. So that's it. Those are the only 2 teams left. And even if Sticks It In You wins this week, but then loses the next week, that would be heartbreaking. Tenacious D, I mean, yeah. Well, even if they win this week and Tenacious D wins the next week, Tenacious D would win that conference. But at least if Sticks It In You wins this week, they would have to, Tenacious D would have to submit a lineup next week. So they want to get 2 buys in a sense. So even there's like, multiple layers of importance to that game for not only Sticks It In You, but for the entire league. Because if a team gets 2 buys in a row, that is not a good thing for anybody except for Tenacious D. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Going down, the Frank Drebin Conference. This is much more complicated. As you can see, I kind of started doing this, and then I'm like, there's way too many things that can happen here. So, break it down. Granny's Baloney Curtains, they have to play Monstars either this week or next week. I'm not sure when it is. I'm going to have that note. Week 11. They play Monstars week 11. So, I mean, that could be the game of the year, essentially. I mean, could be. If Granny's Baloney Curtains wins out, they're going to obviously win the conference. If they win this week and lose, and Monstars wins out, which means they lose in the final week, Monstars win it. But then you also have Bring Back the Butt Fumble in the equation. So any of those 3 teams could feasibly win. And I mean, mathematically, without looking at tiebreakers yet, and I do that for a reason, because you would not believe how many damn scenarios there are with some of these teams. It's just too much work. Too much work. I don't really get paid to do this, so if I got, a job at ESPN as a stats analyst, I would do the work. But until then, no way. Way too many scenarios. So that's where we're at there. Now, speaking of way too many scenarios, look at this. I want you to see this real quick. We are 2 weeks from the end of the year. There are 12 teams in each conference. And mathematically speaking, at least basically on sheer wins and losses, with 2 weeks to go in the season, out of the 12 teams in the Brody Bruce Conference, 9 of them at least have a chance based on wins and losses to make it into the playoffs, okay? So, I've never seen that before. I mean, don't worry about these numbers. These numbers aren't right, where it says 16, 17, 18, 19. I messed up on, if you noticed this morning, you may have seen rankings that are now different because it was 5:15 in the morning and I sorted things, but I didn't sort things right. So these numbers aren't really that important. They're not accurate. But what is accurate are the wins and losses here, okay? This is very important right here because, I mean, these are real. These numbers here on the ends aren't real. But what is real is that Mayfield's Chubb, Kakambas, Hockenstein, and Stafford's Bastards are all 6-3 with 2 weeks to go. And we're going to look at the schedule here in a minute, but holy shit. Even Tony Lay, Rob Jazierski, Arias Blade, Whisper Eyes, and Boston George, technically, based on wins and losses, still available. Still alive, rather. So, my God. Oh, man. So much action to be had here. This is going to be the craziest couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Just move, you little shit. Okay. So now, we're going to look at this week's matchups, okay? Because that's really what's all that matters. Okay. So, Melissa's Meatballs. She's out of the running at 4-5. Taking on Toon Squad, 5-4. Toon Squad, I believe they're out of the running too. They are, whatever. But we're looking down here. We got Bleeding Blue Bombers versus New Orleans Rock Trucks. Obviously, that currently is the game of the week, no doubt about it. Bleeding Blue Bombers wins that, they get 2 buys. New Orleans Rock Trucks wins that, they at least cut them down to a chance at 1 buy. They're not going to get 2 buys, okay? Then we got Providence Power taking on Play with Mike Ditka, both mathematically alive still. You've got Giggle taking on Can I Get a Hot Chub at 7-2 and 6-3. Huge game there. Number 3 versus number 16, obviously. Yeah, OPP taking on Zeke's Relationship Corner. Not all that important, but we like OPP. You down with them? Then you have, where's another one? Sticks It In You taking on Tenacious D in an absolutely huge game. I mean, Nasty Nutria taking on My Balls Accurates. I believe both of them are still mathematically alive in terms of just wins and losses. You've got FL Farging Ice Holes taking on Aria's Blade. Loser that is completely eliminated. You've got Hockenstein taking on Cucumbas. Huge game, both 6-3 right there. Mayfield's Chubb taking on Stafford's Bastards. Let me tell you. And Boston George taking on the Black Hole. I have to say it once. Couldn't say it because it's in the bottom 10. Couldn't say it because it's in the top 20. But I just had to say Black Hole one time. Now twice. So, yeah, a lot of these games down here, like Hockenstein Cucumbas, loser that pretty much can forget about it. Not entirely. Mayfield's Chubb and Stafford's Bastards, same thing. Oh my God, they're all 6-3 and they're playing each other this week. Are you kidding me? Those are the top 4 teams in that conference. So, oh man, that one is, oof, that's going to be a mess. My question is, who do they play the next week? Shall we look? We shall. Mayfield Chubb? Because this could do a... They play the Wyans. That does not matter. Stafford's Bastards, who do they play next week? Does anyone play... The question is, does anyone play those ranked teams the last 2 weeks? Aria's Blade? Nah, they're technically in the running currently, so that's a big game coming up. And then Cucumbas, they're going to be playing... Who do they play? Whispering Eyes. I don't think they have much of a shot. No, unfortunately. And then, was it Hockenstein's the last one? Brady's Ball. So this week is critical for so many teams, including pretty much that entire Brody Bruce conference. They all play each other. So, yeah. Cucumbas, Hockenstein, Mayfield, Chubb, and Stafford Bastards all play each other this week, people. It's going to be crazy. I can tell you this is the 7th or 8th year I've done this, and I mean, the fact that, okay, first of all, let me just tell you how blessed we are to have an even 72 teams, because that means every game was in conference play. There was no out-of-conference play. That really drives these scenarios way more complicated when there's out-of-conference games, too. Luckily, they're all conference games. But I'll tell you, man, like, especially this Brody Bruce situation that's down here, you're talking, I mean, 6 teams that are completely alive. Whispering Eyes, by the way, are alive. So 9 teams that'll based on the numbers, because some of these teams will play each other, so I'm sure some of these teams aren't available, but whatever. Just for the thrill of this. I've never seen a conference that close 2 weeks ago. That jam-packed. And we've been seeing it all year long, too. I mean, they've been just beating the shit out of each other all year long. Nobody's racked up like the Tenacious D's just beat up on one of those divisions. And Bleeding Blue Bombers for the most part until this week. Let me just tell you, too. Who could come down to be the most significant player this year? Believe it or not, Amari Cooper. Not the Black Cat from last night, but Amari Cooper last night, by catching a pass, much less a 45-yard touchdown, not only did Amari Cooper secure the fact that Tenacious D remains undefeated, but it also, at the same time, made that Bleeding Blue Bombers was not undefeated. And why is that important? Because when it comes down to it, even though you win your conference, even this conference winners are seeded. So that Amari Cooper may have been what made Tenacious D the #1 overall seed when it all comes down to it. Because, yeah, it was all down. Bleeding Blue Bombers needed Amari Cooper to not catch a pass in order to win, and obviously that wasn't going to happen. But best thing I read on Twitter this morning was this. The Black Cat, the famous Black Cat now, has spent more time in the end zone at MetLife Stadium than the New York Jets all season. That was hilarious. With that, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to post this, hopefully this morning. You guys have a wonderful day. Get out and vote if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you soon.